to this computer. Hello, everyone. Welcome. So today we will have a meeting on COVID and its impact, long-term impacts. And let's start brainstorming, because I bet this is the discussion that's going to pop up for years to come on what's the impact of this and how much it has affected the learning of students and our way of teaching. What are the holes that we are not covering now, or what are we doing extra, etc. In 2 weeks, we have another meeting, and it's about exams. So just so you know, that has been posted and sent email to you. Welcome, everyone, and I hope you all turn on your microphones and participate actively. Dwayne, do you want to take over?
If you're willing to give me control, I'll gladly take over.
Yes, share screen, multiple participants, everybody can share. Go.
All right, so welcome everyone. Glenda was brave enough to ask me to kind of lead this discussion today, or silly enough, I don't know which. And you don't give me a lot of instructions, well, I come up with my own instructions. So I put a couple of questions and ideas together that I'm gonna ask everybody to kind of respond to. Everybody individually. Now, keep in mind, there's quite a few of us here. So don't, you're not going to take an hour to give your answers. Give like a 2-minute synopsis of some of a couple of these questions. So I'm going to share my screen here just so I can get you the questions available to you. Okay. So as Glenda said, the overarching question was COVID and its impact, long-lasting changes. So what I would like people to share are, what is something that you have changed because of COVID that you will keep doing when things go back to normal, whatever normal might mean in the future, of course, because as you and I both know, probably things will never be exactly the same they were. And that is one of the things that changes. So what things have permanently changed your college due to all of this? Okay. What things have permanently changed in your department/division? Okay. And what of these changes worries you the most? Okay. And since I know most of you, and since some of you I haven't gotten to pick on in a while, I'm just going to get us started by saying, John, you're laughing the hardest. You're up first.
Nobody said you're muted. That's unfortunate. That was on my bingo card. So something that I've changed because of COVID that I'll keep doing when we're back on campus, I'm going to phrase it that way, because like you said, normal is unlikely. I will probably continue to have, at least as an option, some online office hours, so that if students can't come to campus, maybe they can contact me and we can video chat and share screens, and I can help them that way. Things that have permanently changed at our college due to all this, that's hard to say, because the leadership at my college is largely interim again right now. We had our president left unexpectedly back in January. The executive vice president for academic and student affairs that we had hired in August became the interim president. We have an interim vice president of administrative services that we are sharing with the sister college. We have a vacant vice president of institutional technology. So we're really trying to figure out what's going to change permanently. My fear is that we're going to not hire as many faculty in the fall as we might have had we been on campus because of the enrollment drop. The thing that worries me the most is that since I'm a department chair, I'm tasked with supervising individuals, and that's very difficult to do in a remote environment. I can't see people holding their office hours. I can't see people going to class. I can't see lab techs in the lab rooms, things of that nature. And so it's very difficult when students start contacting me and saying, my instructor is not doing this. And then I contact the instructor and the instructor says, I'm doing this. And that's a difficult one. Anyway, I'm pretty sure my 2 minutes is up.
That's all right, John. Well, I picked on John first because he literally in the same district as me, and I haven't seen him in like a year, so I had to pick on him. All right, who would like to volunteer next to go?
I'll go.
All right,
I'll go. So I haven't been to a barber in a while. That's this is, and
Love it.
this may be I may keep doing this because, you know, I didn't enjoy going to the barber before. Why not? No, in seriousness, that I think things that have changed that I'll keep doing. A lot of changes I've made to the forced separate lab courses. There's a lot more opportunity for computer simulation sort of laboratories and video analysis things I was kind of working on. My plan was roll this out over 3 to 5 years. I rolled it out over 3 to 5 months, but it has worked better than I thought, and students are responding well to the flexibility and how can I approach experimentation rather than go measure stuff in the physics lab. There are some other ways for them to experiment. They've liked that. So I'll probably keep doing those things. What's changed at the college? Well, kind of remains to be seen. In Nevada, our budget is abysmal. People stopped going to Vegas. The casinos were shut down for months. Our revenue, we're staring down the barrel of 20 to 25% across the board reduction at the college. So that might even result in worst case scenario closure of the campus. We don't know yet. But more likely, we will have consolidations with other community college campuses. How that goes depends on who gets put in charge. So we don't know. Department and division, we haven't had a lot of really serious change. I think the biggest change has been, what do we spend money on? There's been a much larger expenditure of money on tech, particularly internet related things. For the first time ever, the department actually offered to buy me a computer that was worth having. So that's definitely a change. But I think that most of those changes will become permanent, and we have a lot more investment in the higher tech things. And obviously I'm most worried about the big hit, which for us is ultimately comes down to enrollment. Can we enroll enough students that we show a viable use to the legislature and they keep giving us money to keep the place open?
I think that's going to be a recurring theme for an awful lot of us. Who would like to go next? Go ahead, Renee.
So let's see. One thing I think that has changed that I'm going to keep with is the Zoom office hours. Like John said, I'm having a lot more attendance during my evening office hours, and I feel like I'm a lot more accessible to students. I like the features of drawing on the whiteboard in Zoom and stuff, so I feel like I'm reaching more people. So I think I'm going to continue doing that stuff. I'll just touch on just one other thing so that way we can get around to everybody. But what changes worry me the most? So right now, I've sort of given myself almost the freedom or the pause to not know the students like I used to know. You know, like when they came to class, you really get a personal, when you were working in the lab, you got a really personal sense of what their strengths were and everything, and what their personalities were like. And so right now I've given myself the freedom of being like, you know what, you're not going to have that same relationship with them. And I'm really worried about that in terms of how can I make sure to still build that connection. Some of them are going out of their way and really attending my Zoom times and really making sure that they maintain that personal connection, but others, it's like they disappear. And I worry about that sort of disconnectedness. How can I make that bridge a little bit better for the students? So
David, you tried to volunteer a minute ago, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with everybody who said Zoom office hours are something they're going to keep. I think there's just this huge mental barrier for a student to knock on your door that has, I wouldn't say evaporated, but it's just become a lot easier. And also just the ability to say, oh, you're working at this job, you can't go to my normal office hours, but if you want to carve out 20 minutes at 7 o'clock tonight, I can do that. If you can do that, that's just kind of been earth shattering for a lot of students. We have a very active union that has pushed back on a lot of the attitude of our governance structure to basically say this is a permanent change. And so far, I haven't seen anything that I've been upset about that has been labeled as permanent. There's just been a lot of, okay, this is an emergency measure. And then when COVID is done, everything will go back to normal. I have faith that if things are pushed on us, there'll be a lot of pushback. But one of the things I worry about was when we went and said, okay, we're going to do our labs online, we just sort of did this blanket, okay, all labs are now online. I worry that when we go back, the pushback from administration is going to be labs are expensive. We have to hire this lab tech. How about we have as many labs online as possible? We're going to solve some budget issues that way. And it's fine with me if some instructors say, hey, I think this worked better, I'd like to continue to do it. I worry that administration is going to by fiat say, hey, you're going to have this many labs online or all of your labs online because we want to do it that way. So that's my big worry.
Thanks, David. Who would like to go next?
I can go next.
Okay, thanks.
Something that I have changed that I would like to keep is discussion among students. So as part of online delivery, we have to make sure that students are engaging with each other. So every module, every topic, I come up with some kind of a fun discussion for them to have. And that actually creates a lot of good discourse amongst the students, which is very interesting. So I would like to keep that. In terms of permanently changed, I don't know if we can even say that. Did we know that any of these things would happen? I question the word permanent anymore at this time, so not sure. But what changes that worry me the most was the faculty hiring, just like John mentioned. But what has happened is that because our college has decided now that we are going to be online fully until the end of spring, many older colleagues in other departments have decided to take an early retirement. So the order of faculty hiring has completely gone out the door because there will be some departments that have nobody in it. So they have reshuffled everything. So that worries me. And in terms of the physics classes, some of my labs are videotaped online, and I find my students really the original students not having the ability to deal with simple things such as a force meter, like a spring scale. They had no idea how to read that. They have never seen one. For students who are this is their first term, they have never seen one. So they had no idea how to read it. And it didn't occur to me that, they would have no idea when I take a picture of this, how this thing works. Things like that, like things that we took for granted when they had a hands-on experience would be different. That's what I worry about.
Nice. Who would like to go next? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Carl Treppi, and I kind of like to jump on a lot of that same kind of hands-on issue. What has bothered me, even in our own in-lab courses, is that we don't get enough hands-on. If we do much of the work for the students, then the end result is they never touch things. When we have like take-home projects, they don't know which end of the screwdriver to hold. And that's the nature of our beast of the students we get nowadays. If we continue in this mode, then what we're going to end up with is theoretical engineers and only theoretical physicists. And I worry very seriously about that. On the other hand, what I do find nice about the videoing of the labs and PHETs and the other ways that we're doing, is that those combinations, when we go back to what we were doing before, they may serve us very, very well. I would like to see all of our videos of labs end up being a pre-lab. When I was at the University of Texas, the chemistry department had a pre-lab requirement that a student couldn't come into the chemistry lab unless they passed the pre-lab. And the end result of that was they had a whole lot less breakage, and they didn't have as much, amazingly, insurance issues with things blowing up, so to speak. So they had the animated labs that had the student do something silly and blow up the lab. And that meant that they learned things that they would not have learned otherwise. What I'd like to see us end up doing with this, particularly with the lab piece of it, is, like I said, use it as a pre-lab, then use the FETs, which we're doing as well. And I begin to see that we can actually cover maybe 2 to 3 times as much as we did in the historical labs. So I'm looking forward to that. In terms of the college, I'm not an obsequious person, but our president not only changed his name from CEO to chancellor, but he's been really good about taking care of faculty and staff. I'm hopeful that that will continue and that our finances will hold up. Don't know if it will or not.
All right, thank you. Hey, Theodore, you lit up, so you're up.
Okay. Everyone's covered everything pretty well. Again, I haven't had as much. I thought I'd have more people coming to my evening office hours on Zoom, but I have gotten some people showing up for that. So that is something I definitely want to keep, is making myself more available, because again, community college students, their schedules are all over the place. And I've had so many students over the years say they could make it if it was at a different time. So I definitely want to keep that. One interesting thing that's happened at my college is that in order to keep teaching our synchronous courses, every course we have has to have a master shell, a course, so a fully asynchronous online master shell. So even if we've never taught it as asynchronous, if we want to teach it as synchronous in the future, we have to have these master shells made, which is interesting. And that does worry me a little bit as far as pushing us to teach online. Now, the one thing that's sort of saving us on that score is that our Illinois Accreditation Agency, which lets our courses transfer to all the Illinois colleges, does not allow us to transfer labs that don't meet in person. And the only reason we're getting away with it now is because of COVID. So the accrediting agency gave us a full sort of dispensation through the spring of 2021. But after that, hopefully, once this emergency is over, hopefully that's gone. Because again, I forgot, I'm bad with names, but Trapp mentioned earlier, having students touch things and do things. What I really miss right now, my classes are mostly almost like lecture. I can't really do I try to do activities on Zoom, but they their cameras are off. It's hard for them to interact. As Renee mentioned, having that personal relationship is really important to learning and important to the group work. I miss having my class where students come in and they like, is this a lab? Like, no, is this a lab? Nope, not a lab. Is this a lab? Nope, that's not a lab. It's science, okay? This is how you do science. And I don't have that anymore, it's just, so yeah, I'm sort of treading water here. Hopefully we can get through this together. So I sort of miss some of that. And I enjoy these meetings, getting ideas from you. If you have any better ideas for me as far as teaching on Zoom, I'm ready. I'm willing to learn here.
Oh, I've got one that I haven't heard mentioned, and
Good,
I'm in a small rural community college. I'm usually lucky to get 12 students in my class to begin with. And on the one hand, I've been meaning to start Zooming the lectures to broaden my appeal for students who are a little bit more remote. But I'm also noticing that the 4 years are starting to poach a lot more. So it remains to be seen whether it's going to be a net positive to be more accessible to the remote students, or whether I'm going to get more loss to the 4 years.
Hey, Negusi, why don't you go?
You said
You knew I was going to pick it. No, Nagusi.
Negusi.
Unmute Nagusi. Come on.
Who's trying to take my position?
That was Glenda.
That was good. Okay, I take that. She's the boss, so. Well, I think most of the things I'm concerned with have been said, but I will keep the office hours. But even with the office hours, when we moved in the spring, it was nice. Everybody came into the office hour and so on. But now in fall and even in the summer when I was teaching, I was just sitting by myself doing my work. So that worries me. And I keep on saying, you know, please, I'm available. Don't just stick to that one. Just click on it or send me an email. But it's only when homework is due, like a few hours there before, or when tests are due an hour or so earlier, just for, so that worries me. And the other permanently changed thing, I don't think we can see it now, but at least in the Northeast for us, the snow days are gone. So we will have things ready for that. I think that may have changed. So the other at division department level yet to figure out, but I think the changes are coming, you're right. For example, we are trying to invest in, you know, lab kits from companies, third parties. So that may be something that we'll be looking forward. So the third party would send the lab kits, and then they will, you know, sign them a waiver for liability, and that we have already started that. So that may continue. So what worries me, as you know, as has been said, the lab worries me. That's why I'm giving a hybrid class. And what I learned from this hybrid class this fall is that even though I posted everything, detailed everything on our course management, the students really don't read that one and still ask me the questions that, what? Didn't I say this once? Is this so? That really, for me, is just the tip of the iceberg. So really, they are not following. I'm not having them. So that worries me. I don't know how much they know, how much they have understood. If this was in person, I would, you know, poke some things and then put them in group and so on. This one, I can't get them to do that, and that was really evident when they come for the lab section. So that worries me. Another thing with the lab, as has been said, that worries me is that this really, now we have come to a point where, well, you know, online labs, you know, why don't you do it online, on ground? Whereas, you know, this hands-on, the value of the hands-on part is, I think now, is becoming fluid. That worries me. So that's another thing. And then I was just getting an email saying, you know, why don't you put in 24 students so you can teach 14, 12 here, 12. So we didn't have that because we are limited. And I responded saying, we still have, you know, all the limits in the lab. So they backed off. But there are a number of things that are really has changed in terms of valuing the hands-on activity. I hope that's what worries me most.
Thank you, Nagusi. Who would like to go next? Or I'll pick.
I think I'll go. I'll
try to pick.
I'll try to speak really fast because I'm outside. Yeah, so I moved from from my previous institution, so it's a little different for me. I teach synchronously. I'm teaching physics, calc-based physics 1 and 2, and for those of you that are in California, it's basically 3 hours of lab and 1 hour and 30 minutes. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So Friday, at least I have a breather. But so one of the things I think I would keep would be what my colleagues have done. They took some videos of their labs and they've done a lot of Excel stuff for the lab, which I really didn't do initially in my labs. I wasn't using as much Excel, maybe only a little bit for computation. So that's something I might have to use. I don't like them that they're not hands-on. So I've tried to do a lot more. I did video analysis with the students. I taught them how to do it. And then I had them do a video analysis, throwing a ball thing. And hopefully I'll do another video analysis project. But it's, I think computational stuff works really well online, especially if they are writing code in a breakout room and you're dropping in to help them out. I found that they like that a lot more. And they still like hands-on stuff. So I have my labs, my 3-hour labs. I guess Dave might have that. We have them on Zoom, and we have breakout rooms, and you drop in, even if it's not hands-on, you kind of check on them, and it's a lot easier. You don't get too many questions. But I have the lab due at the end of the week so that if someone doesn't show up, they can still do it later. So yeah, I guess the only thing I would change would be permanently change, I guess, do more videos, because I never really did any videos at all. I'll keep those videos that I've done, although I know they're of poor quality, but I'll keep them for future and try to use some of those Jamboards in real life. That's about all. A lot of things worry me now, but I'll say them later.
Don't keep me up at night with your worries, man.
Well, Joe, sounds like you want to go next then.
Maybe I can go.
Sure, Magda, please. Please.
Yes, so, hello. Yes, I work with Glenda at Suffolk County Community College, so I'm pretty new over there, but I really see that this exchange of thoughts here, it's great. It's just wonderful, and I'm happy to join you. Thank you, Glenda. A few words. At this point, I teach only introductory courses at Suffolk County Community College, but I have more than 10 years experience also at higher level courses from the previous institution at Delphi University. So at this point, what will change permanently is, at least at the level of introductory courses, is to incorporate more simulations in recitations. So not only just simple calculations as they go during the introductory course classes, but showing more simulations, computer simulations, and let students do it. Labs is a problem. We have virtual labs, so I now cannot do hands-on experience. So I started to stress on data analysis, and I think this will stay, like incorporating elements of computational physics to the introductory courses is what I'm thinking about. And what worries me the most is the lack of hands-on experience. It's very difficult to generate measurement errors using virtual simulations, and the students at the intro levels are not able to make some serious home experiments. So I think they are losing the sense of what the real measurement error is. But I hope to have back the in-person classes, and right now I can just try to let them generate some kind of measurement errors on the screen, but it's not, it's as I heard before, not having a screwdriver in a hand will not make an engineer. So not having hands-on experience, at least at some point of introductory level courses or mid-level courses, that's something every physicist should have. So summarizing, introduction of computational physics and stress on data analysis in labs, but at the same point, that worries me that the hands-on experience every physics student should have, at least the basic one. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there's still a few of you who haven't shared anything. I won't name any names like Joe or Chris or Krista or. Go ahead. You got your hand up. Go for it.
Me?
Well, one of the two. There was two hands up, so one of you go.
You go ahead.
Go ahead. No, because I can't see everyone's picture on my screen. I only have 4 pictures at a time. So go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead.
Thanks,
So,
David.
so just a couple of mundane things, but I think our answer to number one, that things I'll stick with, I think it's having students turn in all their work online and me not having to collect papers and carry them around and return them to students, and being able to grade them online using the online, learning management system. Like, to me, that has been, I will never go back to collecting papers, except for exams. I would like to have exams in person. So I think that's been really useful for me personally. And then it's helpful for them too, because I can make sure they have them in their hands. Like if there's an exam coming up, they don't have to worry that I have their homework anyway. And then a couple other things about using learning management that has been really helpful for my teaching is, I'm making lots of videos of lectures, and I was already doing that to some extent, but now some of that I probably won't go back to doing in person because, well, there's some things where you do lots of demonstrations, you get lots of interaction, there's lots of questions and answers, but there are other little mini topics where every time I present it, there's 15 minutes where there's silence and just me talking. But I still feel like it's something I want to present to them. So then that's a good thing to do as a video. That I don't need something that just never gets any interaction, but I still feel the need to throw at them, that can stay as a video for them to watch. And then the other thing I am finding I'm doing a better job of is, because I'm using we use Canvas, I'll have here's what we're doing today, here's the lectures, here's some other optional resources, here's the chapters in the book where this is covered. So I'm presenting it to students in a way that's way more organized than I usually do, to my fault. But I mean, this is forcing me to be more organized in the way I deliver material to them, and I think they're benefiting for that. So I'll stick with those things.
All right. You tried to go last time, so go ahead.
Okay, I don't know if you're talking to me because I can't see everybody.
No, I wasn't talking to you, Krista.
Okay.
Actually, I wasn't talking. But okay. I'm
teaching algebra-based synchronous classes, and so those students aren't, they aren't going to be physicists or engineers, and the middle to strong students are doing fine. I have a lot of breakout rooms. I have a lot of structure, a lot more, even though I had a flipped class before. So I had those little mini lectures, 5-minute lectures that they had to watch before class and an example problem. The real work happened in class. So I'm trying to make that happen in breakout rooms, and sometimes it works. But I also have weekly reflections that the students fill out that I was doing in my flipped class as well. And they're telling me, the good students are saying those breakout rooms work. But anyone that isn't at least a middle to upper student is saying, well, you're not giving me the answers. What I really need are the answers. And what I find is where online grading is working for other people, it's taking me a lot longer to give the level of feedback that I typically give on paper. And just the technology just slows it down. So that I'm going to go back to paper. So I'm just going to pose that it's opposite for me. Right now I'm in a grading abyss, and I am automating more things, but I don't think that I will keep that. What worries me the most, and the other thing that at a department level, we have 25 full-time faculty in our department, and we switched to remote meetings. I think it might be a good idea to always have that because of people's schedules that are all different times. So anyhow, we might keep that. I will also keep the Zoom office hours because I agree with the accessibility, improving that. And what worries me the most is in the fall when I teach Physics 1, I always have students that want me to spoon feed. And of course, I've been trained by, certain people that are running this meeting that, spoon feeding is bad. And so in person, I can get them to buy in at least by the end of the semester, or they move on to another instructor because they can always get a good lecture elsewhere. But they want me to give them answers, and that's not what I do. So that's the part that's worrying me the most, is the struggles that I have in person that I figure out a way to get through. I am struggling with that a little bit. My middle to upper students are fine. It's the ones that I'm going to lose that worry me.
Thank you.
Thanks for saying that, Chris. I felt like the only dinosaur that still likes paper. It takes me so much longer to grade online. I wish I knew what secrets Glenda and David have for all that.
Well, I know, and I'm a paper person too, but I found that if you do the speed grader in Canvas, if you have an iPad or a tablet where you can do a pencil, I can actually annotate it just as fast on that. It flies back up to them. So you can actually do annotations with pencils and stuff.
I have D2L. I haven't figured out how to do that with my iPad yet.
So I annotate on a surface, and it scrolls up and it puts electronic lines in it. So then I switched over to using a rubric so that I wouldn't have to write as much electronically. So yeah, I'm a work in progress. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I did find a limitation with the Canvas annotations because I had students that were, the way I structured the homework was do some stuff, turn it in, do some more stuff, turn it in to the same assignment. Turned out to be a bad idea. I can see all of their submissions to a particular assignment. They cannot. They only see their most recent submission to an assignment. So they'll turn something in, I mark it up, I annotate it, I give them a grade. They turn something else in because they finished more work, and suddenly they can't see what I annotated. So I am finding myself attempting to restructure the whole assignment structure midstream, which is kind of a disaster.
All right. I'm not sure of your name. It's F. Faye. You're up. So.
I'll just add to that discussion about grading. Grading rubrics are definitely the way to go. It makes grading so much faster. And the other thing I wanted to add is for those of you who were in the same boat as me, because I was stuck with 4 people on a strip and I couldn't see everybody. But if you drag on the right side of the PowerPoint, there's a drag bar. You can drag the PowerPoint. Like I dragged it to the left of my screen. The PowerPoint is small now. Now I have everybody on the screen. So I heard a couple of people say they have the same issue as me. I just figured it out. Our college, I think the biggest change that is very concerning is our enrollment for the fall dropped 25%. And I'm concerned about that, obviously, for the winter semester, if it gets even worse. And because the enrollment was so bad, 536 people at our college got laid off. And so that's put everybody under more stress and pressure because we don't have the support services. And in our department, I am the only one who's had any, I'm Moitzi trained. I've been teaching online for 20 years. Since I'm the only one who's Moitzi trained, I'm the only one qualified to create classes that could be classified as hybrid or online. So I am now the only one, and when we create the courses, it's fully contented. So everything, all exams, homework, everything is done for the semester. And the only thing our adjunct do is come in and basically they grade and interact with the students in the discussion board. So I've been swamped with being responsible for 37 sections, including most of the tech support, because everyone in our department, I am the only one with any kind of technological experience. All the other people I work with, they had difficulty checking email prior to COVID. So I've been giving personal, I literally become teacher to our faculty, and every week I'm working with them and teaching them. And so I'm putting in 12, 16 hours a day since last March, and I don't take days off. So my concern is that if our enrollment doesn't go up and we don't get our support services back, that the number of hours I have to work with the increased responsibility might stay without a pay increase to go with it. And so I like the work I'm doing. I just don't need so much at one time. And it would be nice to have some help. So the things that we've done, we're using kits. And so I ordered kits for all of our physics and physical science sections. So every class is using kits. We normally do 12 labs. I only ordered kits for 6 labs. And the other half we're doing online with Pivot Interactives, because it actually has measuring tools that students use. And so at least they're measuring something. They're having to pay attention to the measurement rule, to significant figures, and then they analyze the data. I am now really seeing how much we coddle the students in the laboratories, and because they can rely on other students to do the work for them because they work in groups. And now that they're at home having to work with the kits, they actually have to do the work. And so like somebody said, they don't even know how to use a screwdriver. I didn't buy anything so complicated that they actually need a screwdriver, but just giving them the instructions on connecting a pulley to the end of an incline the other day was interesting, to say the least. I mean, something that in the classroom, you know, it would be 5-10 minutes and it would be over. It took 30 minutes for me to get everybody at the same place with just getting the pulley on the incline to do our friction lab. But I have discovered that my PowerPoints are quite effective at helping them. So I'm taking close-up pictures of step-by-step of everything. And of course, I share that with all the faculty. And so that has helped tremendously, these PowerPoints for step-by-step. So I think one of the changes I do want to keep is forcing students to do their own work. I think we've gotten so much to the point that we allow them to rely on other students to do their work for them. And I know my daughter is at another university and she's taking physics right now, and listening to her perspective has really influenced my thinking. She's one of the upper students. She's you know, a fantastic student. And so she does the work for everybody else. And she says it makes her sick that she works so hard, but everybody gets the same grade as her and they're doing nothing. They're contributing nothing. And she says, and they're definitely not learning. They don't know anything. And she says that she views teachers as enablers. And boy, when she said that, that was like a slap in the face to me, because I'm like, I'm one of those enablers.
Getting group grades, they're getting group grades for a single lab report, for a single thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, sometimes we do that once, but then there should be a lot of individual grading too.
Yeah, but it seems like everyone, it's pretty local. Everyone does it this way. That's going to be a change I make, where that's not going to happen in the future. Students are going to have to do some at-home measurements. I'm going to, we have all these kits now. We bought $200,000 worth of kits. And so now that we have these kits, I'm going to turn those kits into homework. And so when we return to the classroom, we'll still do the group work, but they're going to have to do some individual work as well. And I'm trying to decide if it's going to be more a post-lab or a pre-lab that they have to do. I'm thinking it'll probably be more effective if they use the kits for a pre-lab and then come into class ready to actually contribute to the group and be helpful. And, so I'm hoping that, so that's a permanent thing I plan to do. And I plan to keep the Pivot Interactives too as homework in the future. I won't consider it a lab like I do now, but in the future, I'll consider it homework to really get the idea of measurements, because I'm finding too many students they can't use a ruler. And a protractor is way above their abilities. And those are simple tools. And I don't think anyone should graduate college without knowing how to use a ruler or a protractor. Those are pretty easy tools to use too, just it takes time and practice. That's it. And my worry is that when we do get to go back to school, because our school has already decided we're staying online through the summer, that we're gonna have to wear masks. And I don't want to wear a mask all day. And so it's like, I'd rather stay online. But I don't think teaching physics online is good. So I have this internal dilemma going on. Just please, let's get to the point where we don't need masks anymore.
Thank you. There's about three or four of you that haven't spoken yet. You know who you are. Don't make me call you, right, Joe? Joe's volunteering. So Chris, you're second. You're on deck, Chris.
Yeah, I'll throw my 2 cents worth in here. Believe it or not, this situation has shown me a lot of positive things. For example, I like working from home because I have my library right here at my disposal and I can look things up when I need them. And at our last meeting, Dwayne, in conjunction with some other colleagues on Twitter, finally pushed me over the cliff to try oral exams. And I've been threatening to do that for a long time. I was just afraid to try it, but I'm going to do it. It's probably going to be a logistical nightmare at first, but everything is a logistical nightmare at first. So I'm somewhat comforted by that reality. So I'm going to try that. Something that has permanently changed at our school, as far as I know, we have moved to a 4-day class week and a 4-day work week. So Thursdays are my Fridays, and my stress level has just gone way down. And I like that. It means that students have 3 days away from class. The bad news is that it means that students have 3 days away from class instead of 2. So there's a little bit of guilt there, but students tell me that they like it because it helps with their work schedules and so forth. And I know it's permanent. What we don't know is whether that Friday will be used for meetings or something like that. That could potentially change, but right now I like it. The school is completely shut down on Fridays. As far as departmental changes, someone else earlier, and I don't remember who, forgive me, I like the virtual department meetings. I really like that. And what worries me the most, I'm still seeing a lot of the same things that I saw before the switch to online. The good students remain good students and they remain engaged. And I tell you, I have some kick butt physics students this semester. They get this whole technology thing. My astronomy class over the years has been intentionally designed to not work online. And surprise, here I am now trying to make it work online. And I'm worried about some of those students because this is the course where they're supposed to learn what science is and how it works and all this other stuff. And it's very hard to observe shadows of a stick on Zoom. And I ask them to do it on their own and they'll say, yes, sir, we'll do it. We'll do it. And then they come back and say, well, you know, I didn't do that. So it's kind of the same stuff that I was worried about before, but someone else said this too. I believe that this situation just kind of amplified it. So I do worry about that a lot, but I think overall this is a good thing because it's also forcing us to use technology for something other than looking at videos of cats. And mind you, I don't mind looking at videos of cats, but I think we've been forced to use some of this stuff more seriously now. And I think that's a plus.
Thank you, Joe. Chris.
Hey, I am trying to use this technology thing called a smartphone at the same time as I'm here on Zoom, and this is really hard. So Something I did in spring was to reach out to individual students with individual messages. And this was something I kind of knew I should do, and I tried to do in person. But when we switched to remote, I was very intentional about reaching out to individual students, and ones that were strong in class. And then when we went remote, I kind of lost them. I would ask, what's going on? Is everything okay? I noticed that there's a change. Is there anything I can help with? And sometimes that was all it took to bring their motivation back. There were some students who were very not motivated earlier, and then when we switched to remote, they became much more motivated. And so that gave me an opportunity to reach out to them and ask them what changed for them, and stuff I can also to use and share with other students. So something that permanently changed is I left my college. So it's actually become much more draconian. So the college administration was going more and more that route, but going to remote teaching has leveraged the stick. So over the summer, we were all forced to do a 7-week training to do remote structured teaching, which was basically synchronous online stuff, so that none of us are actually qualified to do online teaching, but we had to do synchronous classes. And I heard after I submitted my resignation that they announced the week before fall classes started that spring classes would switch to a quarter system from a semester system. And I have no regrets. I miss my students, but other than that, there's been a lot of push. I mean, one of the reasons I left, and I think I can say this, is that I felt a lot of pressure to conform to the majority of instructors rather than getting to try my own thing. And remote teaching has allowed the majority to rule. And so I think one of the other things they're doing in the department is that everyone's got identical courses using identical systems. And to me, that just feels like, why do you have instructors? You should just have robots. So what worries me? Well, I worry about the college I was at, just because there are a lot of good people there, and I know that they are trying to leave, which puts a lot of our students in the lurch, because I think they were getting a really good deal, getting a really good education, and that is decreasing. And I'm very envious of those of you who've talked about how supportive your administration has been, and how open-ended they've allowed all of you to be, because the school I was at has become much less so.
All right. Thank you, Chris. And it's good to see you smile, by the way. Especially when you said you resigned. I like the big smile that came across your face when you did that. All right. Glenda kind of put hers in there in the chat because she didn't want to talk to you guys, is what she said to me earlier. So Andreas, I don't think you've spoken. Do you have anything to add?
No, actually not. I was actually on the telephone with a student, so I wasn't able to listen in. Sorry.
So you were actually being productive. Oh, I see how this works.
Oh, I don't know. No, actually, that's true. I was, but I'm sure you guys were very productive too.
I'm going to add a couple things for myself, because I will tell you a couple things. You all, a lot of you have a very different experience of what's happened with your Zoom online, your Zoom office hours than I have. And one other person mentioned this. It's a ghost town. I have nobody coming. I have nothing. Okay. I beg, I plead. I literally say, because, if you set up Zoom, you get, oh, there's somebody in your office hours meeting. I check that every 20 minutes and saying, if you're in the evening and you're doing that, I will log in. I still don't get any takers. I have, which is a complete opposite of my experience previous to COVID. And unlike most of you, that's because I'm scary. That's probably true, Glenda, but they'd be more scary in person, I would think. And I'd come to that. Anyway, the reality is, I don't know how many of you are this, I'm actually teaching the vast majority of my classes actually face-to-face this semester. Okay. The vast majority of my classes are face-to-face. 2 of the 3 days a week on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday are actually face-to-face classes. Now we've got a weird structure of how we have to do it because of social distancing and so on. But even then, I still don't get the office hours. Now, one of the edicts from our administration is office hours, even if you're teaching in face-to-face classes, have to be virtual. So in some cases, the students a lot of times are traveling probably to or from, as opposed to being able to actually go to office hours. So I think that's actually kind of detrimental to them. The one thing I will say that we did as a division, that one permanent change that I like, is our division has become much more cohesive than we ever were before. And in particular, in our united to our administration, that when this is all over, we are not going to be teaching online, because I've definitely learned that truly online teaching is not for me, whether synchronous or asynchronous. But we actually got the administration to agree and put it in writing that they won't force us to teach online classes once this is over. Okay, and we actually had it put in writing from our president and signed as a memorandum of understanding. That's probably the best thing we've managed to pull off. So that I'll say that was my happy point when we got that signed.
Who is we? Is just physics or like your entire college?
No, just my division, physical sciences, engineering, physics, chemistry, and geology.
So one more thing that I would like to add is that another concern, of course, is exam. It's basically on my part. So I think on my part, I'm trying different things, but in general, just not knowing how much they know, whether they have done well on their exam online, is really a concern. You know, you could see, you will have, you know, group work, have them work on the board and talk, discuss, explain things and so on. All that interactive, active learning part for me, at least for me, is gone. And the measure of the grades now, because the exams have no way of checking, even though our college is just getting some of the, you know, responders and other, learning management based kind of proctoring. But that worries me. Even if I have it, there are a number of other issues that come with that, using that software. So that's another area of concern for me.
Yeah, I don't think anything can replace physically being present. If you're giving a traditional exam, there's just no way around that. If you're trying something more experimental, like portfolios or something, most of my students have never done that before, so that's even more scary for them right now. I just want to add maybe a positive note here is that, you know, Krista was mentioning her middle to lower end students, they really need that one-on-one attention. And without these activities and having an active classroom, you can't really reach those students who aren't at the top tier. And I have my students in my classes during breakout sessions say, I really wish I was in the classroom. We missed the interaction. And I guess on a positive note, I think that gives us hope that there's a lot of, you know, there's students who need us, and that hopefully people will recognize the value of this education that we give and support it. Because those students are not going to get that help anywhere else.
So speaking of exams, Dwayne, what are your suggestions, hints, or what's worked well with the oral exams? Because that's a big concern of mine, that I want to know that they're all learning something, and I'm not sure that my exams are getting at that.
You want to learn whether students have learned anything, talk to them directly one-on-one for about 15 minutes. They're 15-minute exams. So what I do is I do 3 an hour over the last, what would have been the finals week. So you can pretty much space them out. You have 15 minutes, 5 minutes between to reset. And what I do is a series of 3 to 5 questions that I pose to them, and they have to annotate. Of course, in the old days, aka pre-COVID, they had to write it on the whiteboard, but now it's annotate on a Zoom screen what their answers are, what their thought process is, because it allows me to probe instead of just giving partial credit for something. Okay, can you give a hint? Can they get there? So the rubric is really set up. Okay, it took them 1 hint to get from where they were going wrong back to the right place. Okay, so my rubric's based on that. how many hints does it take to actually get you there? Or is there just no amount of hinting I can get or suggestions to actually get you there? And so I'm really doing it in that context. Okay. And it allows me to see things. And sometimes they say things I didn't expect. And it's really nice. And one of the things you have to worry about is one student telling the next student what the questions are. So what I do is I typically set up 2 or 3 different exams, sets of 5 questions for a class. And you can make them sufficiently same, but sufficiently different that you're testing the same ideas, but you're not necessarily, just because they went after Tom went after Larry, it's not helping them any, even if they talked.
So you give them the questions when they come into the Zoom room or,
That's right.
or
There's
wherever. with you.
they
Okay.
have no prior. They told us everything for the entire semester, and here we go. And even when they first see the question, they may not have the whole question in front of them. So in other words, if I gave them a velocity versus time graph, and okay, what's the displacement? What's the acceleration? Okay, great. Now, what would a force diagram need to look like for this, and so on. So you can keep scaffolding the same question and keep adding pieces that they're not even necessarily ready for, or thinking about, or necessarily framing in the context. It's a great way to see what your students know. And I'll be honest, you pretty much know whether your students have learned anything in the first 3 minutes.
And so when they ask, well, how do I study for this? What do you tell them?
Well, you want to tell them up front that this is going to occur earlier in the semester. Okay. In other words, Joe's thinking of doing it. You need to tell them now, okay, that they know it's coming, because they need to understand that they're going to have to be able to explain and do these things and be able to practice it up front. Don't spring it on them the day before the final, the week before the finals. You'll get some disgruntled. It's a good way to get complaints. But one of the things I'm emphasizing, and I've been doing this for a couple of years now, is that you really have to let them know up front that they're going to have to be expected this. They're going to have to do this. So all this time and practice in class, in the discussions, you have to be participating. You have to be sharing, because pretty soon you're going to have to do it to me. Okay. Now, the one thing I do for a class that's never had one before. So in other words, my second semester calculus based, I don't do this with. My first semester classes, I actually have a 5-minute practice one that they can come do. In other words, like 2 weeks earlier, where I say, okay, I'll be one question, but you'll get to see what the format is like, how it's going to be, what it's going to feel like, what the pacing and the timing is going to be. Okay, so they at least have an experience with it before it's actually for a grade. And I think that's important for the first timers doing it.
So is there any other, Dwayne, is this 100% of the exam is oral, or you have some part?
Nope. And I do this for my finals in all my classes. My final is 100% oral final.
How long does it take you, like, for to finish the whole class?
It depends on how many students there are.
How many
of course.
students? So
yeah,
you do 3 per hour, you said?
3 per hour.
Okay.
So if you do a 6-hour day, you can get 18 in a day.
So
and
what was
the
Go ahead. What was the feedback you had from students?
As a general rule, they like it, because they like, especially if you sell it as, okay, I can get to give you hints to try to get you to finish the problem or to show me something. Because a lot of times if you work with groups, you ask them a question, it lights something up in their head, and they can go further than they would have if they were just on paper and pencil. And if you sell it in that way, that this is the reason I'm doing it, they tend to respond very well. Okay, because you can actually provide some hints to get them somewhere. Whereas on a paper one, I'm sorry, you got what you got there.
And can you share a sample rubric to get me started?
Yeah, I can do that. I'll send you one, Krista.
Thank you.
I'll actually send you the whole one of my finals, and then just give you the rubric associated with it. Joe, you want one too? Okay.
I think a lot of people do. So maybe could you just post one somewhere?
I'll put one up somewhere and then send a link out to the listserv.
Or we could check Chegg and see if they're over there.
The good news is that they never had access to them. They're on my they're on my iPad, so it's a shared screen thing. So unless they're taking pictures, which they're wasting, it'd be pretty obvious they're taking their time doing that. That's a pretty big waste of time to do.
Have you had students say, I don't have a camera, you can't show you what I'm doing?
Well, it doesn't matter whether they're showing me what they're doing because I'm making them annotate on my screen.
Okay.
In other words, they're not writing on their own piece of paper. They're annotating onto my screen through Zoom.
And how do they annotate? Do they all have the technology?
Well, they're already on an online class at this point. And in the past, but pre-COVID, they were doing it on a whiteboard in my office.
They can type. I mean, some things can be typed. And
yes.
If it is like lines, you can do it with the mouse pretty well.
And the reality is, in a lot of cases, you know, if I tell them if they can do it orally, do it orally. But if you need to draw it, draw it. And keep in mind that they've been annotating in the online classes, in these Zoom classes I've been doing, even though I'm in person, some of them are not in person, they have to get used to doing things and Zoom through the whiteboards or annotating other people's screens. So it's a skill they should have been developing all along.
What percentage of the total grade is your oral final exam?
15%.
Wow.
And do you do midterm oral or only final?
Only my final is, because it does take a lot more time. However, keep in mind, there's really no grading. By the time they're done with the oral, you're done grading, because the grading system is really based. I'm sitting there making little hash marks on a piece of paper. How many hash marks equals how many points off, and I can give them their grade at the end of their oral final.
It's totally feasible.
Go ahead.
That's okay, you go.
I was going to ask, I used to give oral exams a long time ago. I never gave it as a final exam though. I did it as part of a written exam. So like 15% of the grade. And I stopped doing it because of the pushback students would give me by the fourth exam, that they weren't graded fairly, or I didn't understand. I misunderstood what they said. So their grade should have been higher. Those kinds of arguments. How do you deal with that? Because that's why I stopped doing it.
Well, to be honest, I've not had that. And part of it, I think, is because of the kind of questions I'm asking, as opposed to the kinds of questions I would have probably asked previously. You do have to frame the questions differently. You do have to ask them slightly differently if you're going to do this than you would in a traditional exam. And the other piece is the grading is literally done. Krista asked about the rubric. It's quite simple. If they get through the problem all the way without me having to provide any hints, kicks, nudges, they get 100%. One nudge, point off. Two nudges, it's a point off. It's really easy. Every time I have to correct something or help them with something, it costs them points. They understand that up front. They understand that from the practice. And so it's not a matter of whether I'm grading it unfairly. They know the rules up front. Every time I have to help or kick them, it costs them.
Yeah, but for me, the students would. So I gave them a hint when they didn't need it, or that type of thing. It's like.
Well, and yeah, go ahead, Renee.
I was just going to say there's also the added layer that I've encountered this a little bit. As a woman, I think you're going to get a little bit more pushback from some students being like, no, you don't understand me. You don't get this, and so I think that we have to bring that into the picture, that it's also, us as women asking, and then some students get really upset when it's a woman saying, no, you didn't do this correctly. No, you didn't get this. No, that's not the way you phrase this. It's just, that's the way it is.
And there is actually some educational studies that show exactly what Renee is saying.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate, but true. I obviously haven't experienced it from a woman's side, but it is a real educational research. One of my colleagues, Angela McClure, does do these also. And she's had a little bit of it, but what she's done to do it is she was the one originally came up with the idea of doing the practice one. And she found that the practice one really alleviated quite a bit because they saw what was going to happen in terms of grades and how it was going to be graded.
Do you?
Yeah, and that's what I do the oral exams as well. And I do a lot of practice in terms of like getting them to explain their work. And pretty much by the time that we get to the oral, it's very much, they know exactly like, oh yeah, if I don't explain it, then Miss Lathrop's going to probe me or ask me a question. And, you know, so they're prepared. If you prepare them and give them practice stuff along the way, that's going to be like mock situations, then I think that they'll be prepared.
Or at least less combative about it.
Yeah.
You grade the practice?
I
yes,
graded. Go ahead, Renee.
I was just going to say, I grade it as in like, okay, so you have these 3 things. I grade 2 out of the 3 practices and be like, okay, you know, so if you get a hiccup, if you get the first one and it's not good and you're not explaining yourself, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Learn from it and go to, you know, so I usually have like 3 assignments and I grade the best 2 out of 3 for their practice, you know, in terms of getting them the feedback.
And I would add that when I do it, the practice, I will tell them what grade they would have gotten, not necessarily to record it.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of a question you have asked?
All right. Hold on one second. They're pictorial, so I got to grab my iPad. Hold on one second.
One of the questions that I usually ask, just while Dwayne is getting his thing, one of the questions I usually ask is like, I usually have like a picture and then I'll say something like, describe to me how the free body diagram might look for this. And that they can sort of, you know, oh, well, this vector is going this way, or they can use their finger to draw on the page, you know, or something like that. They can talk that through pretty easily. I'll also trying to think about, I might give them 3 situations on the screen and I say which one, you know, has the most torque on it and explain. Sort of like going along the lines of a tipper type of, or a tipper. Yeah. So, but Dwayne, go ahead.
No, this is from a conceptual physics class this summer that I taught this summer. So to give you an idea, I do this at all levels. This is just one of the questions that I had. As soon as this decides it wants to share, okay. So this is just for someone, you got to modified Atwood's machine. Of course, they didn't call it that. You got to, okay. Based on this, starts at an initial velocity of 0. And notice me explaining the words. Okay, draw me appropriate velocity and acceleration graphs for this situation, for the cart. Okay, annotate, do it, draw it. Okay, then explain to me in words, describe to me, and it's not necessarily written here, but in words, describe to me what the motion of the velocity is for the cart. It's going this, that, and the other. They don't define their coordinate system. So if they draw a positive velocity, increasing velocity, but they haven't defined which direction is positive, okay, let's go talk about that. All kinds of different things there we can do and say, okay, great. Now draw me a force diagram for the cart. Okay, is that consistent with your acceleration graph over here? Right, everybody following? So it's a series of building questions like this. This is from a conceptual physics class from the summer. So just as a simple example there.
Thank you.
It really feels like tippers.
What?
It really feels like tippers. Like you get a lot of inspiration from tippers.
Yeah, I mean, they are good. I mean, they're open-ended questions. And the nice thing is I can frame it slightly differently student to student. So one student can't help the next student.
Okay.
And that's the reason you notice it's just kind of a situation and some basic things I can do with it.
One of the other questions I really like about doing oral exams is sometimes I'll use the tippers that are sort of like, student A says this about this. Describe and tell me what's correct, what's wrong, you know, and we just sort of talk it out and reason it out. And that's a really great question.
I just heard you guys use the word tippers twice. What's tippers?
Tippers is a series of activities that were developed by Kurt Haglicke and Dave Maloney and some others, but tasks inspired by physics education research is what it stands for.
Oh.
There are a couple of versions, about 3 books out on it. There's a mechanics one, There's an E&M one, and then there's one that covers everything that's at a lower level, which is a really nice one, which is just called Tippers. And there's also a ranking task book, which is Theo was holding up. They're all done by Pearson.
All really good.
All really good. Unfortunately, they're not. Oh, I'm sitting here using one as a mouse pad myself right now. So, okay. Because to be honest, anytime I do a class this way, it's right here, so that if I need it, I have it. They're great tools, and some of them can be very. Some of them are very conceptual. Some of them are very mathematical. Okay, they're range almost in every level from what you want. This particular book is their last one that they ever made, and it actually covers everything. And it was aimed to be a little bit lower level in terms of maybe at conceptual and or high school, but there's an awful lot in here that's great for calculus based too also.
Whoa, this has been amazing. And we are overflowing a little bit to the discussion we're going to have in 2 weeks, which is more about exams and more ideas about exams and the nitty gritty. For instance, Negusi, you were talking about, a lot of us have been talking about all this monitoring devices and all, but the truth is many of us haven't used that yet. So what is the feedback? What are the hurdles when you're going to do this the first time, etc. Right? And those who have done it, what is their experience, etc., etc. So that'll be great to talk about in 2 weeks. Okay. Any other comment? Highlight, advertisement of something you would like to do right now? Otherwise, thank you so much. Thank you, Dwayne, for organizing.
Of course, my pleasure.
Sharing so much. That was awesome. We missed you. And
I missed me.
I missed and we see each other in 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone. I'll post.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. In a couple weeks.